Welcome to Real Estate Investing Abundance, the show for busy, fulfilled professionals like you to learn how to develop financial independence built on solid, passive real estate investments. Now, here is your host, Dr. Alan Lomax.
Hello, enlightened investors. I'm your host, Dr. Alan. Delighted that you've joined us today. Are you a busy professional, passionate about the work of your calling, yet realize that even though you love what you are doing, you're exchanging your time for money? You know that if you were to lose the ability to exchange time for money, your financial well-being will be in jeopardy. If you can relate, I have great news. Steed Tucker Capital is an investment company designed for professionals to develop financial independence built on solid, passive real estate investments. Remove the anxiety of an uncertain financial future and go to steedtucker.com. Get your free one-page 10-step guide to passive real estate investing. Enlightened investors, today we explore how to scale a real estate business from 1 to hundreds. Our guest, Bobby Sharma, immigrated to the United States in 1984 and earned a degree in computer and information science and subsequently worked for a number of startup and large technology companies. At the age of 24, he house hacked his first house and over time scaled his portfolio into the hundreds. In 2019, Bobby retired from his tech job and is now focused on private money lending, helping people invest in cash flowing assets, monitoring a handful of members, and focusing on syndication real estate. Bobby, before we get into scaling real estate investing, share a memorable experience from your formative years that helped you to be the person you are today.
Thank you, Alan. Nice to be here. So the experience, I would say, I was in a high school overseas. As you mentioned, I immigrated here. It was 1974. I was cast as George Washington in a school play. And I was just a kid, and I learned about American history and about George Washington and Jefferson. It was in my teenage years that I started to kind of think about what America is all about. So it was some place mythical that I admired. It was before the internet. I'm a little bit older than a lot of your listeners, I'm sure. But that was where I said, look, America is where I want to be. It's the land of opportunity. And even as a teenager, I didn't know how, but somehow I knew I was going to end up here. And I came here as a student and I got my degree in, of all things, computer science in Alabama. And I love it. And I've been from Alabama and ended up in Silicon Valley, but it was all part of my American dream. So being accidentally cast as George Washington in a school play has led me to this. So,
what country is that?
So I grew up in a country in East Africa called Tanzania. And so Tanzania is famous for the wildlife and then Mount Kilimanjaro. And I actually grew up and went to high school on the slopes of Mount Kilimanjaro. But there was a lot of wildlife that we got to see, the zebras and the lions and the giraffes and all that, the leopards. But honestly, didn't appreciate it until I left. After I kind of wish I had paid more attention, but maybe one day I'll go back.
What a fascinating place. All kinds of mythologies about Mount Kilimanjaro. What in the world were you doing a play about George Washington in Tanzania?
Most of my teachers were Europeans, a lot of Scandinavians, a lot of Canadians and Americans. And that year, while we were studying history, the books we were studying were related to the American independence. And I think it was 1976, right? When was the bicentennial? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it was 1976, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it was 1976. And that was the year my teacher, I still remember his name, Mr. Campbell, he said, we're going to do a play about George Washington, Jefferson, and everybody had some lines and we had to get in front of the school and do the play. But it was part of a history class that I was in. So that's how I ended up in the play.
Oh, interesting. Well, you started off in real estate investing, doing house hacking. And I suspect at the time that you started it, It wasn't even a thing, and nobody had ever heard of house hacking. I don't think that became a term until probably the mid-2000s, something like that. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Would you ever invest all your money in a single stock? Very unlikely. Yet investors are willing to risk $50,000 to $100,000 in a single property in real estate all the time. Avestor is the world's first customizable real estate investment platform. Investors can build their own custom portfolio selecting investments across multiple asset classes such as single-family homes, multifamily, student housing, self-storage, and shopping centers. You can also invest across multiple markets and different time frames. Avestor also enables other real estate entrepreneurs and syndicators to build and use Avestor's infrastructure and cloud platform to create their own customizable real estate funds. To learn more, visit us at avestorinc.com. Avestor, real estate investing made simple.
Well, tell us about that start. Where was it and what was that experience like?
So after I graduated from the university in Alabama, I was looking for a job. Long story short, I ended up in Los Angeles. When I moved from Alabama to LA, super expensive, and I was making really very basic income. And what happened was I was renting a room from a gentleman, and I saw what he was doing. Well, he had a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and he was renting out each room. And I was very comfortable there. Everything was good. But one day, he rented out the living room. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Somebody's crossed the line there, you know? So I randomly was driving around on a Sunday and I saw a Century 21 for sale sign. I parked my car, walked in, and I asked the agent, the realtor, hey, you know, I'm still working on getting my green card. My company's sponsoring me, but I'm not a citizen. I don't have residency. Can I buy a house? And she's like, I don't see why not, but I'll check with my broker. I'll get back to you tomorrow. So I looked at the house. She called me the next day. She goes, yep, as long as you have a W-2, you can buy a house, you know, so back to the American dream. So I did some math and I said, if I buy this house, I had a little bit of money saved up, not a lot. Basically, my life savings went into the down payment. I said, if I can live kind of for free, I'm good. So I ran the numbers. They ran the mortgage information. And she said, yeah, you can afford it based on your income. And I'm like, okay, let's sign the papers. I don't know where I got the courage to do all that from looking back, you know, but I did it. I was 24 and it was in Riverside, California. And the next day after I got my keys, I went and put an ad in the Riverside Enterprise, the local paper. There was no Craigslist or Facebook at that time. We're talking 1988, 89. But the phone started ringing and I got 2 roommates and I lived in the master suite. And then I had 2 roommates. One was an X-ray tech and then the other one was a plumber. And we got along great. And basically I house hacked. I was living for almost for free, not quite. I think I was still coming out of pocket for like taxes or something, but everything else was covered, utilities, mortgage. So that's kind of how I got hooked into the real estate sort of investing cycle.
So that's kind of like you got into it, you just put one foot in front of the other. No big major plan, but you just, I'm going to give this a try, and you stepped into it. And once you got in that process, you had to take the next step and the next step and the next step. A lot of us get into things that way, and that's the way to do it. Don't look behind you, just look forward and keep on going. An excellent way to get started, and obviously you didn't have a big master plan at the time.
Enlightened investors will be right back after this important announcement. I have a big ask that will only take a moment of your time. Ratings and reviews are the lifeblood of our podcast. So to leave a review, iPhone or other Apple iOS device users, go to Apple Podcasts or iTunes. For all you non-Apple device users, go to podchasers.com. On either platform, search for Real Estate Investing Abundance. Once found, please leave a review and a rating. Subscriptions are also vital to our show's success, so please be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. It is free to subscribe, and you can unsubscribe at any time. But I expect you learned a whole lot from that process. First of all, just how to take one step at a time until you get to where you're going. But I expect you didn't even think about this as you were going into it. But one of the greatest things about real estate investing is the tax deferments. And did that come as a surprise to you when tax time came around and wow, I'm getting a refund here? Did that happen to you?
It was a surprise, to be able to write off your mortgage interest and get some tax breaks along the way. That was a total surprise. I hadn't even accounted for that. So yes. And like you said, it was purely accidental. But then over time, I've learned to not quite optimize it, but certainly it's available to all real estate investors. It is one of the benefits of investing in America. Very few other countries have those types of incentives that are built for their citizens, and the United States does. So it is something to look into seriously.
I brought that up because that happened to me when I first got into my first rental property. I was expecting rental income and a little bit of profit from that. I was working in a job I loved, and I was single and had a good income. And when tax time came around, I'm going, wow, this is really nice. And so it took off. Well, you didn't do a whole lot of planning when you first got into this, but you have come to realize that planning is an important part of the investment process. Share with us how you planned this out, because you've come a long ways from that first investment, and it didn't happen by accident. Share with us that planning experience.
Yeah. A lot of it has to do with what I call insecurity. As an immigrant, there's always a little bit of a fear of failure or being, maybe if I don't make it, do I get kicked out? There was a certain inbuilt fear or insecurity in my psyche. So the thing that I did that I think helped me the most, and there was a gap in my life. I got married and all that. There was a time when I was not tightly, I was just focused on my W-2, and I wasn't quite as involved in real estate. There was about 11-year gap in which I wasn't doing a lot in real estate, just focused on my W-2. Which in Silicon Valley, when you work for a startup, it's a lot of work, a lot of hours. But luckily, in 2 cases, I had a nice payday when the company went public. But again, that got wiped out in a divorce. A lot of that gain, or actually all of it and more, got wiped out in that divorce. So again, that sense of insecurity, the sense of losing it all was always there. But the best thing I ever did was start networking with like-minded people. And, this is way before the big networking events that we have nowadays and online networking and all that. Just back to basics. Go find out where real estate people are hanging out and go drink a beer with them, have a coffee with them, have lunch with them. To me, that was where I kind of learned the ropes. And I also learned the ropes when I was going through my divorce. I lost almost everything at 39. I had lost whatever I had built up. I had lost almost everything. So I said, I need a side hustle. I need to make up for that loss. So I knew how to design websites. And I became a designer totally by accident again, but a real estate broker needed a website. And then through him, again, being surrounded by other real estate investors and good people, ethical people. So as I was designing his website, he was giving me some pointers. And that's kind of led me to realize the power of networking. And then in 2010, I launched my own meetup in the San Francisco Bay Area, November 2010. And fortunately, that's become the largest networking meetup in the San Francisco Bay Area with over 5,000 members. I've been doing it for almost 11 years now, every month. And if any of your listeners and viewers are out there, number one is, of course, talk to you and consult with you, but also network. Like that's where you're going to find some of the best ideas, some of the best partners, and potentially some of the worst partners, because I've met good and not so good partners through those events. So how do you distinguish between is often not obvious. Maybe in another session, we can dive into that. But the most important thing is networking.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. As an industry-leading, relationship-focused, design-build construction firm, Mosaic Construction has worked in many different asset classes from multifamily to retail, medical, industrial, and commercial. Mosaic Construction works to execute interior and exterior renovations with their team of trades and project managers. Their experience with value-add improvements has resulted in increased ROI and long-term value of the assets. They work nationally in partnership with local trades to deliver thoughtful, problem-solving construction management solutions to all their clients. For a personal, no-obligation consultation, call Ira Singer, 773-491-3145, or email Ira at mosaicconstruction.net. You can also find Ira on LinkedIn. Absolutely. And there's so many ways to do that these days. Like you have these meetup groups in the Bay Area. When you started them, were they face-to-face?
Face-to-face.
Face-to-face.
The good old face-to-face.
Which is excellent. But those have been expanded to where we can network with people all across the country at the touch of a button. And it's not just meetup groups, but there are also multiple podcasts. Mine certainly is not the only podcast, but that's a great way to do networking. It's a kind of a hands-off networking, but it is a form of networking. Then there are also investor associations, real estate investor associations. Just about every community of any size, you're going to find one. Some are better than others. Some have tremendous amounts of education into their organization. Some just meet kind of informally, but there's going to be some kind of group to get involved with. And so I say do that. And then in addition to your meetup groups, you've got Facebook groups and there's LinkedIn groups and there's all kinds of ways and means to network. So where 10 years ago, it took a tremendous amount of effort to network. Today, you can network with minimal effort and expand your network pretty readily just from sitting at your desk and touching the button. Well, how does this play into the planning process and into envisioning and into mindset?
Yeah, definitely mindset. It starts with the mindset. Yeah. So for me, it was, okay, I'm here. I have opportunities. I need to be successful. What do I have to do? Like you said, there was no grand master plan. It was wake up every day, one step, in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. And luckily, it just happened. And I think it has a lot to do with my ability to network and my desire to network, that people were being introduced to me that became my future partners. They came to my meetups. Some of them presented at my meetups. Sometimes I presented at other people's meetups. I would also go to other people's meetups. So just because I ran, that I would only go to mine. I would go to other events, network there. But I was a ferocious networker. And through that, I just happened to come across people that were doing stuff in real estate. They were starting out. They were a little bit ahead of me, but they needed help. And I volunteered to help. In many cases, for example, a mobile home park asset fund that was a small fund. They were based out of San Francisco. They owned about 11 mobile home parks. And one day I had invested as an LP in that fund. And one of the general partners lived in San Francisco and we met for lunch. And, I said, how are things going? And he's like, we're struggling a little bit with asset management and so on. I volunteered. I said, look, I'm an investor in this. I said, listen, what does an asset manager do? And he kind of described, and it's, basically project management and, oversight of property managers and so on, and running some Excels and doing all the work that the team needs. So I said, listen, I want to volunteer. You don't need to pay me and I'll help you out. Maybe it's temporary, maybe it's permanent, but we'll take it one day at a time. So I just helped them out. I would make phone calls. I called the tree trimming services, the septic tank guys, the installers, they removed the mobile home park, called the property manager, asked for the monthly reports, organized the monthly reports. Any of the dirty work that I didn't want to do, I would do it. But that was the way for me to get into the business. It was always about how can I serve my members? How can I serve my partners with no expectations in mind? If they come, they come. If they don't, no big deal. I'm just doing my part. And I do the same thing at my meetups. We pack the rooms. We get about anywhere between 80 to 160 people at our events. And I used to feed the people when they would come to the events because I knew they were running from their office to come to the event and they were having to stop and pick up a sandwich or pick up a slice of pizza or whatever, So I was fortunate that I was able to provide for their meal when they arrived. Nothing fancy, but enough to say, you know what? I appreciate you guys being here. We never charged any kind of a fee. So basically, it just kind of snowballed from there where people started feeling very comfortable. It became a regular thing for them. It was a social thing. It was a nice kind of go hang out with a bunch of real estate people and make connections and help each other out. But so the mindset had to be there. And then it was the planning. Okay, which aspect of real estate do I want to get into? I tried some fix and flips, Alan. I tried local in the San Francisco Bay Area. I tried them in Kansas City, Huntsville, Alabama, St. Louis, Indianapolis. I just realized I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy fix and flips. That wasn't my thing. So I had to abandon that after a couple of years of trying it out. But I stuck to what I knew, which was, mainly apartment syndications and private money lending. So that's where I've now kind of specialized. My investing strategies is on private money lending and syndications. But I tried a lot of things. I'm always willing to give it a try.
Well, a lot of the gurus out there say that the most expensive way to learn is through trial and error. But in reality, I don't know that there's a better way to do that. I mean, all of those gurus have wonderful sales pitches, and you can spend thousands and thousands of dollars on the programs that are out there. But until you dip your feet into the water, I don't think you can truly learn. And so you're going to have to do some experimenting, and not everything you're going to try is going to come about to be something you're going to want to get into and to follow and pursue. I wish there were a way around that, but I frankly don't think there really is. And like you said, you just have to get in there and take action and make it happen. And surround yourself with positive people who have high integrity. And once again, that's sometimes trial and error, because some of the biggest shysters out there can look like they have the highest integrity. And that's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is in life. Well, tell our viewers and listeners how they can make a connection with you. You've got several different sources for them to make that connection. So run us through those things. We'll put those things in the show notes as well, but tell us.
Thank you, Alan. So really easy. The latest project that I've been working on is a platform. It's a free platform for real estate investors to track the performance of their real estate assets, whether it's rentals, Airbnbs, private money loans, tax liens. We get excited about buying a property. And then we buy it. We've got a property manager, or we're self-managing, or whatever it is. But then we forget to track the actual performance of those properties, those assets. So what do? We know, okay, did the rent come in? Was it short? Was it okay? Did the rent, okay, as long as the rent came in or a piece of the rent came in, maybe it's fine. Maybe a syndicator promised you a 16% internal rate of return, but he's delivering 6% internal rate of return. Well, is that good or bad? How are you tracking that? So what we did was we created a platform for people to track the actual performance. We made it super simple. You don't need to do a lot of data entry. It's a true product that came, or a service that came out of Silicon Valley. I've been there for a long time. My partners have been there for a long time. So the best way to find me is on bettercapital.us. So the website is bettercapital.us. And my email is simply Bobby, BOBBY, @bettercapitalus.
Very good. And I'm going to be sure I make those connections as well. Bobby, share with us one of your most difficult setbacks in life, and how did you come through that time? And primarily, what did you learn from it?
There's a whole bunch, but I don't think I've ever shared this with anybody, but I was a victim of a Ponzi scheme, and it was a very difficult time in my life. This happened in San Francisco. He was a mortgage broker he got me. He lured me with unbelievable returns, made the payments for several months, and got me hooked to invest more with him. It was the money that me and my wife had saved for our down payment. We were living in an apartment, and he basically wiped me out. That was by far the most traumatic, and that had some downstream impacts like divorce. I don't blame her. She didn't trust me with money anymore, and it caused a lot of problems. Ended up from that Ponzi scheme losing even more because of the divorce. So went through some really dark times. And I think, this is the first time I've shared about the Ponzi scheme. But went to the DA, went to the police, nothing happened to him. The people who sell pot or used to, or they jaywalk or steal a television or whatever, they get bigger punishments. But the people who commit white-collar crimes, they get away with it. As long as they got a good lawyer, they can get away with it. So he's still around. But Alan, that was the darkest period of my life.
Well, Bobby, thank you for sharing that. I know that was difficult to do, and I know it was a difficult time to go through. But those are the things that help us all to learn. And I'm glad you had the courage to share that with us, because those shysters are out there and they're difficult to spot.
They look like just anybody else.
Yeah.
And they talk just like anybody else. So you got to be really careful who you get into business with. So do a lot of due diligence, and background searches now are available. But yeah, be careful.
Well, they call them sociopaths. And the they're great at the social aspect. They've got that down pat.
Yeah.
But they have no conscience to go with it. Well, how are you putting your success as an investor and entrepreneur to work to create universal well-being and abundance for all beings?
So again, I truly believe in serving fellow human beings of all kinds. So a lot of it is in education. My meetups, just like your podcasts, are focused on educating people. The better educated we are, the better decisions we'll make, the better financial and maybe personal decisions we're going to make. But it starts with education, or awareness. So I spend a lot of time teaching, coaching. It's not a formal program, but if somebody comes to me and says, I need help, I need guidance, I'll sit down with them and spend a lot of time. But the meetup has been a very good and a very effective forum for me to help uplift a lot of my members. And I've seen they're friends of mine now. We know each other. We share stories. We grab dinner. We grab lunch. And I see their progress. I see how they came into the meetup 5 years ago, not having ever done a deal, to now where they're doing multiple deals, complex deals. They're putting stuff together and they're progressing in life. So I have dozens and dozens of such successful stories. But that's my way of giving to society. But I want to continue doing that. So again, part of Better Capital is training and letting people have higher real estate IQ. That's what I want them to have higher real estate IQ. So that's what you have been doing. That's what we have been doing. So that's what it's all about.
Bobby, imagine the end of your life, and as you lay on your deathbed, what will you look back on with your greatest joy and sense of satisfaction and fulfillment?
Yeah, it has to be, of course, on the spiritual level. I think the biggest joy probably has been in just having watched and helped, not something that I quantify, but I know that over the years, many, many, many dozens, if not hundreds, of people have been impacted positively through just being around or having learned or come to the meetup and so on and so forth, or just being online. My gift when I retired from my job and I kind of had some time off, Alan, I said, what do I want to build that's meaningful? And it started with giving real estate investors tools to measure. It's a tiny little gift. And it may be meaningless to a lot of people, but it's a gift that hopefully helps them go in the right direction, which is, okay, now I've worked so hard to save up this money and buy this property, and it's in, Huntsville, Alabama, or it's in Cleveland, or it's in Dallas or Austin or wherever, Phoenix. But now I have a way to measure it, I can track it, I can just have some kind of a control over my assets versus kind of randomly having purchased real estate and hoping that the property manager is doing a good job with it or the syndicator doing a good job with it. Either way, I need to measure it. So my gift to the real estate community is this tool that I've built. And again, it's completely free to use and always looking for feedback. But like you said, as I sit on my deathbed, I would say I've helped create jobs. One of the things that I did enjoy when I go to a project, either that I've funded or that I've done a flip on or something, is to see the workers on the job site. And I know that, look, at the end of the day, they're earning a wage, they're paying for their rent, they're paying for their families, putting food on the table. When I see those people working, it gives me some joy. It makes me happy. So I would say very insignificant, small way, that's what I've been able to contribute.
Well, that is a good thing. And I know you will look back on that with a sense of pride and satisfaction. Bobby, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Estate Investing Abundance, brought to you by Steed Talker Capital, a company working for passionate professionals like you to develop financial independence built on solid, passive real estate investments. As part of our effort to make the world a better place, Steed Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steed Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures, great and small, flourish abundantly. For resources to develop your financial independence, connect with us at steedtalker.com.